Yes, good morning, everyone, and welcome back to the Football Tribe UG channel. Robert Kesakos is your usual suspect. Welcome back to yet another live broadcast on your favorite football updates channel. It's a pleasure to be back with you on this beautiful Saturday morning at 19 minutes past the hour of 10 a.m. that we do come to you live from Kampala, Uganda. I hope you're doing well. And I wish to say thank you so much to all our new subscribers who have recently joined the community. Thank you so much to all our usual suspects that continue to join us every single day, morning and evening. It's always a pleasure to see you around. The regulars, the semi-regulars, the non-regulars, and every single category one of you, thank you so much for always choosing to be part of the Football Tribe UG conversations, and we get to exchange, ideas and thoughts. Of course, for those of you that come through the community section under the comments, that leave me a comment and a like, thank you so much. I do not take that for granted. And on that very note, I wish to say thank you so much to all those that were part of last evening's broadcast. People like JFT, even though you joined a bit late, you still made it worthwhile. Taba, thank you so much. The other was Rio Dandy. Then there was Tana and Rana. Thank you so much for having made it worthwhile. To the people with whom we share multiple forums with, I also send special shout outs to you. So Summer Banks, aka Sagittarius, thank you so much. Much appreciated for the love and support. Mildred, aka Mchala Enzo Fernandez. Mitchell Wine Courts, thank you so much. Gladiator / Farouk, Alex Adinaitwe, Stephen Bokuru, that's my colleague in Imbara at Cruise FM, Mwami Isaac, Paul Chigozi. We've not interacted in a bit, but I hope you're doing okay, my guy. Gregory, thank you so much. So people that Nando, Nando, you see, when I mention the name Nando, sometimes when I want to send shout outs to him, the first thing I remember is that Nando is a brand. A part of me sort of feels like it wants to separate the individual from the brand, but it is what it is. For those of you that have just joined us this morning, thank you so much. Kindly like the broadcast, but also consider subscribing to the channel. Let me know where you're joining us from down in the comment section. I'll be reading each and every one of your comments. Maslow says, I'm back. Hi, Maslow. Good to have you back on the broadcast. I hope you're doing okay. Apologies there. Oh, okay. All right. I just wanted to make sure that I'm getting through all your comments. Sometimes they get filtered out, under the community guidelines section. So I hope you're doing okay, guys. Allow me to have our audios tested just to make sure everything checks out. Not too so long ago, we burned our fingers when we went on for minutes without our audio, about 2 minutes. And I had to go back to studio to try and edit that, and yet it was a live broadcast. You say, guess what? We signed Jose Mourinho. Is it a done deal? Is it a done deal? Because as of this morning, it's yet to be confirmed. I know it's in the pipeline. It's being worked on. But give me your sentiments about that. What do you feel? What do you think of his this supposed appointment of Jose Mario Felix Mourinho? It is Madrid confirmed. I5. Oh, wow. Okay, so what's your overall sentiment? Madrid confirmed it. So what's your overall sentiment about that? About Jose Mourinho's potential return or pending return or return to the Santiago Bernabeu? What do you make of that? What do you think it will lead the club to? Because some people that I've had the chance to interact with, and this is to do with the neutrals, those that just love the football and follow it, those that are Real Madrid fans. Some are sort of caught between two stools, like they're just in the middle of it there. They're just not sure. They are wondering, just as many other people, will it work? Will it not work? Does he still have that winning moji? Does he still have that cutting edge? That sort of thing. JFT says, hello, man. Hello to you too. Mustafa, Sorry, it's Mustafo. Uh, Mustafo says hi. Hi, Mustafo. Maslow, you say, will Mbappe, Bellingham, and Vini will finally get disciplined? Well, I don't think you could have said it any better. When did you go live? Just 6 minutes ago or 5.5 minutes ago. So don't worry, you're not too late for the conversation. So I've said this without any fear of contradiction that in terms of having a manager that has a chip on his shoulder, that has ego, possibly more than the ego itself, the bird that hangs over, high up in the skies, is Jose Mourinho. He's one guy that you just can't do a number on, and he never pays it back in equal measure. If you're going to take a dig at him, be sure he's going to give it to you in equal measure. If you think you're going to disrespect his authority, he will put you in his place. First of all, as a manager, to any player, he does not have to prove himself. He does not owe anybody an explanation in terms of where he is in his career. At the age of 63 years old, I think he's achieved everything that there is, that you think he should be achieving. 2 Champions League titles, one with Inter Milan and one with FC Porto, 3 Premier League titles with Chelsea, a second place finish with Manchester United, which he thinks is the best achievement he's ever had in his career, given what he made as an assessment of that squad that he had then. A UEFA Conference League with AC Roma and a UEFA Europa League final with the same side. And then a La Liga title with Real Madrid, 100 points at the time, 2011, 2012, a treble with Inter Milan, that's winning the Scudetto, the Coppa Italia, and the UEFA Champions League. So, I mean, he has two Scudettos with Inter Milan and that sort of thing. So, you look around, the UEFA Europa League title with Manchester United and the Carabao Cup with the same side. So you look at that sort of CV, and there's not much you're going to question of Jose Mourinho in terms of achievement. Okay. Matslo says, who should Madrid sign this summer? Name a car for an edit. That is mysterious vlog. A car for an edit. I love the G-Wagon. That's my, I think, fancy car or dream car. If the word dream car does, stand as a thing, but we'll leave the car story to that. So when you say who should Madrid sign this summer, okay, let me get to that. So in terms of his profile as a manager, he has earned everybody's respect in the game, whether you like his style or not. At least you have his respect for what he's managed to achieve. He's a proven winner. He's very experienced. Now, the downside to this story is that he's not been at the helm of a big club, at least the size of Real Madrid, ever since he left Manchester United back in December 2018. He's sort of been at what I would pass for tier 2 clubs, regardless of their respective histories. And like I keep saying, no offense to Tottenham Hotspur, Benfica, Fenerbahce, AC Roma. When it comes to global brand, I do not think any of those are equal or can even trump. Real Madrid can trump Manchester United, Inter Milan. I do not think they are at that level. So therefore, I put them in the tier 2. So for the last 8 years, we've not seen Jose Mourinho in that kind of job. And that's where the questions come from. Is he an afterthought? Is he a man of yesterday? Is he past his glory days? Now, I've said this before. It's an opportunistic opportunity for Real Madrid. But more importantly, it is for Jose Mourinho. It's going to be a reincarnation of Jose Mourinho. We get to see what more the man is still made of. Does he still have the cutting edge about him? Does he still command the room like he used to command it? Not that he's changed, but he's sort of in that bracket of grandfather age, when you compare. And as hard as it may be difficult to think, sometimes my head has been telling me that Carlo Ancelotti is maybe miles older than Jose Mourinho, but Jose Mourinho is 63 and then Carlo Ancelotti is 66, so not too far apart. But he's sort of coming into that age. I don't know whether that means he eases down or he becomes a bit more prone to being irritated easily. You know, old people, how they can easily be irritated and frustrated and that kind of thing. Rio Dandy says, hello, sir. London is always blue. Thank you so much, Rio Dandy. Good to have you back on the podcast. So that's how I would look at Jose Mourinho. Now, on the other side, so in terms of the dressing room, I have no doubts whatsoever that if he walks into the Santiago Bernabeu, he's going to put each and one of those players in their respective place. Whether you're Vinicius Junior, whether you're Kylian Mbappe, Jude Bellingham, Fede Valverde, Tchouameni, Thibaut Courtois, regardless of what your story is. Why? Because when he was there, he had not bigger names. I do not think any of those players have a football profile bigger than that of Cristiano Ronaldo. I do not think so. So if he's managed him, what more are you going to tell him? I don't think there's so much that you're going to tell him. He's managed Zlatan Ibrahimovic, I think, during that stint at Manchester United. So anyways, in terms of what players should Real Madrid sign, I think before we get to the players that they should sign, we should understand who they should excommunicate from that squad, because I have a feeling that it needs a squad rebuild. What do you think about the fight between Fede Valverde and Tchouameni? I mean, of course, it happens. Not that it happens in the sense of it's okay to exchange, blows or anything, but disagreements in squads happen all the time, more often than we care to admit. We just do not get to see them or to get know of them, that they never come out in the media. What was the bad thing about it all was that it came out in the media and also they had two fights in a space of a little over 24 hours. So that meant like it's an ongoing kind of thing. Like, you've not resolved whatever differences you're having. And that's not good for the image of the club. So back to the players that you think they should be signing. Like I said, before we get to the ones that I think they should sign, we should be discussing who they should be letting go of. Of course, some names have already been highlighted as expected to leave or that as definitely leaving. David Alaba will be leaving the club. Dani Ceballos will be leaving the club. Now, in addition to that, you have Dani Carvajal, whose contract runs out in the summer. Now, I believe he's the other one that should be leaving the club. In fact, he was also omitted from Spain's squad for the World Cup. That tells you everything that you need to know. And no matter what he's achieved with this club, I'm of the view that the likes of Raul Asensio be let to leave. The likes of Falan Mendy be let to leave. Eduardo Camavinga, I think, is below par. Now, given the fight that is happening between Fede Valverde and Tchouameni, I will not be surprised if one of them is let go of, unless Jose Mourinho thinks of the situation otherwise and that he can, bury the hatchet with those guys, water under the bridge, and then we move forward. Then, forward, Rodrigo Goes, I think he needs to leave the club. Then when I look at a player like Brahim Diaz, I think, okay, maybe you retain him as a squad player, but if a good offer would come in for him, I wouldn't hesitate parting ways with him. That kind of thing. So that sort of squad overhaul is the kind of thing that you need to steady this Real Madrid side. You say, I gotta go now by Maslow. Very unfortunate that you've left before I concluded answering your question, but it's always a pleasure to have you around. Stay blessed, my brother, throughout the course of the weekend. And whenever you find the time, do not hesitate to return to the channel and watch a couple of videos. So then, if that clearance is done, then you go on the building, you're just kidding. Okay, now, once you're done with the outings, those that you think should be leaving, then you focus your energy on who should be coming in. Now, when that many number of players leave, then you have to think of it this way. You have to consider squad depth in terms of numbers, but in conjunction with quality, because it's just not about the volumes in numbers. It's also about the quality. That if Alvaro Carreras, who has been the best left back has been in La Liga this season, not the very best, but I think one of the best, but also one of the best players Real Madrid have had throughout the campaign in terms of consistency. When you do not have him, who is replacing him? Is it Fran Garcia? I sort of feel that Fran Garcia is still a pace down. Maybe he needs to go out on loan and get more regular playing football and sort of hone his trait. And then when it comes to your centre back, where you're removing Raul Asensio and David Alaba, you need to bring not just another kid, like you went out and paid £50 million for Dean Howson. Not that he wasn't worthy of that, but I mean, you need to go and try and get an elite centre back. The question of who that is up to the club. Are you going to try and tempt Arsenal into getting William Saliba? Are you going to try and tempt them into getting Ricardo Carafiori? Unfortunately for him, he's a bit injury prone. Are you going to go to Inter Milan and upset this idea that Bastoni could be headed to Barcelona? Are you going to go to Bayern Munich and try and get a Diep Upamecano? I do not know. I do not know. So that's a question for Real Madrid. They need to go out there and find an elite centre back that can play alongside Antonio Rudiger, as Eder Militao says, as a squad player, in terms of a centre back, alongside Dean Howson. They shouldn't be the first priority. So once you get that one in, then you move. Something applies for the left back. You need that person that can help Alvaro Carreras. Right back, you have Alexander Trent-Arnold. Who is going to debutize him? That's a big question that you ought to attempt to answer. So you can see that the entire backline needs at least 3 players arriving, and not just any players that are really good and are going to provide the competition. Then, when it comes to the midfield, you need a 6. You need a central midfielder. You need a holding midfielder. You need that Vitinha of this world. Are you going to tempt Arsenal into selling you a Declan Rice? You must be ambitious. Now, I don't know. You could take a bet on a less known sort of figure, but one that you really, really think is ready for the level of Real Madrid. A Bruno Guimaraes. I do not know if Matthias Fernandes would qualify, but he is also a good central midfielder from what I've seen of him. So you also need to find a figure there. Then that attacking midfield wall, then a right-sided winger or left-footed winger, you need to find somebody. I'm going to go to Bayern Munich and try to get a Michael Olise. Are you going to try and get a Yan Diomande? Now, for Yan Diomande, I wouldn't pre-qualify him for Real Madrid. I still feel he needs to prove himself. Are you going to tempt Arsenal into selling you Bukayo Saka? Are you going to Gerard Bowen? No, not for me. So, in other words, you just need to find that potent figure to come off that right wing. This business of trying, okay, Franco Masantuano is there, but he should be a backup player for whoever your primary candidate for that role is. And I feel Rodrigo Goes is not going to give us more than he's already given. And for the last 2 seasons, he's not been at it at all. So you must think about it in those very terms. Then, Kylian Mbappe up front, who is his deputy, who is providing him competition. I do not think Gonzalo Garcia is fulfilling that job. Gonzalo Garcia should be third-choice striker for Real Madrid. He should be third-choice striker for Real Madrid, not second choice. So I understand he's 22, and 22, you should, if you're given regular time, you should be starting to mold yourself into the guy that the coach should be thinking about every now and then. So that's how I would assess the squad for Real Madrid, That's how I would put it. Anyways, so moving away from Real Madrid, let's go to Chelsea, because at Chelsea, things are happening. Things are happening, and things seem to be happening real fast. In them happening real fast, we need to fast track this conversation. The other day, I did an exclusive about Chelsea and Xabi Alonso, and I was trying to give my personal views on what I think makes Xabi Alonso the better candidate or the better choice for Chelsea. And that was in comparison to all the other names that have been discussed in the realm for that same job. A lot of names have been floated around. And the one thing that we must come to terms with very quickly is that Chelsea are looking at a young manager. They're looking at some form of rookie, somebody that has shown signs of being good or brilliant. Somebody that hasn't been around the block for many years. They're not looking for Carlo Ancelotti. They're not looking for Jose Mourinho. They're not looking for a Jurgen Klopp. They're not looking for Pep Guardiola sort of a caliber of coach. They are looking for somebody in the realms of Xabi Alonso, Enzo Maresca type, Liam Rossini sort of bracket, Michael Carrick sort of bracket of managers, Mikel Arteta, those guys in that sort of bracket. You know, your Julian Nagelsmann, that sort of bracket. Your Cesc Fabregas, your Francesco Farioli, your, I don't know if Paul Fonseca qualifies to be in that same bracket. He's currently at Lyon. So, anyways, that's the sort of guy that they are looking at, or they are looking to have in terms of their head coach. So, and all the reports do suggest that the guy they have zeroed down to is Xabi Alonso. Now, Paul Fonseca is in his 50s, and I think he's done well. He's done well for himself. Not excellent, but so far not too bad. So anyways, now, Xabi Alonso, according to a report this morning, or according to Fabrizio Romano this morning, he says Chelsea had a direct meeting with Xabi Alonso and final decision is expected very, very soon. Chelsea plan on announcing their next manager before the World Cup. Talks are accelerating. Now, Chelsea also spoke to Iraola, Glasner, and Marco Silva as part of their list. Again, we've talked about this shortlist that Chelsea have been considering for quite some time. And as enlisted as such, in addition to Francesco Farioli and Cesc Fabregas, were the other candidates, as well as Felipe Luis, formerly at Flamengo. He also did play for Chelsea at some point. Now, I said this right from the onset. Cesc Fabregas, good, but not yet. I don't feel he's ready for the Chelsea kind of job. It's not to say that there are no rookies that have gone to bigger teams and done well. Maybe Mikel Arteta could be used as the example. Pep Guardiola at Barcelona, you could name it all. You could go back to a couple of other names, you know. But Francesco Farioli, I saw him burn his fingers last season at Ajax. So I do not feel he's ready for the Chelsea sort of profile of club. So I put those to the side. Marco Silva, I'm just not too sold about him as an individual. Maybe I'm prejudiced by his bad spell at Everton. Maybe that's the issue for me, but I do not pre-qualify him as a Chelsea caliber of head coach at the moment, given the sort of chaos that you're going to have to deal with, because sooner or later, those Chelsea problems could catch up with you. Then, Oliver Glasner, I'll put him ahead of all those that are left below. Andoni Iraola, sort of same realm. These are guys that need to prove themselves at a bigger level. They've been at sort of mid-table teams for some time, so they have a fair share of experience in terms of managing. Oliver Glasner, he's won in the game. UEFA Europa League 2022 with Frankfurt, FA Cup with Crystal Palace 2025, Community Shield 2025 with Crystal Palace into the finals of the UEFA Conference League, in which they will be playing Rayo Vallecano. That's next week, but one on Wednesday, the 27th of May, and that kind of thing. So then, in that very bracket, of course, they're not going to go back to an Enzo Maresca. So in that very bracket, so for me, in the order of hierarchy or pedigree of their candidates for this role, I would put Xabi Alonso. Why? Because one, he's already won before. What he did was quite was sort of historical and close to perfection with Bayer Leverkusen. And he has that. He's managed at the big club like Real Madrid, regardless of what you think of him and how it all went down or how it concluded. It's still a huge credit to his name. So I would put him in number one. Number two, I think I would put Oliver Glasner for his experience, and given that he's won before. And then number three, I'll put Andoni Iraola. So that's how I'll put them in terms of hierarchy. Unless otherwise, if somebody has a different view or opinion to that, I'm welcome to listening to that opinion, what it is. But when you ask, the more you dig into Xabi Alonso, the more you appreciate him. But I've said this before again, and I'll say it, continue saying it again, that regardless of whoever is brought in, time is going to be of an essence. Time is always going to be a question. How much time do you give them? And how quickly can they polish that Chelsea squad into giving you the sort of performances that you desire? I've said also that at clubs the stature of Chelsea, you ought to fight. You ought to try and find a balance, to strike a perfect balance between winning games so that your team remains in a relatively competitive position and also building whatever it is that you want to build or whatever it is you want to cook. I've cited examples of Enzo Maresca. I thought he was perfectly doing that well. He struck a perfect balance between having a competitive team or remaining competitive and winning. At the same time, really, he was building his team. That is how they clinched the UEFA Conference League title. That's how they won the FIFA Club World Cup. That's how they finished fourth on the Premier League globe last season. Really, he is honing his trade, was honing his trade with that Chelsea side. So that's the sort of way to look at it, or the way to go about it, because at teams like Chelsea, at teams like Man United, at teams like Real Madrid, you must find a way to be winning as you build whatever it is you're trying to build. I do not think at clubs of that stature, you're going to get much of a benefit of doubt, like Jurgen Klopp got when he joined Liverpool, when things were sometimes going sideways, that people referred to him as simply a motivational coach for, always pep talking and hugging players, that kind of thing. I do not think you could get the sort of leeway or olive branch extended to you the way it was extended to Mikel Arteta when he had first joined Arsenal. Of course, he hasn't won much. If anything, he's yet to win any major piece of silverware, aside from that FA Cup in his debut half season. So, but he's managed to build a competitive side to remain competitive, really he's building. And remember, he sold them on a project. We did not know the much. I was watching a clip, I think the other day, and he was saying that looking at what they've built, how far they've come, they should have already won something, some major titles. But that has not been the case because of the level of competition, that you get playing in the Premier League. And it sort of took me back to this whole overall project thing. And I don't know how long was sold, but ordinarily I would want to think 5 years, and we're in the 6th year. You go back to his, I think, third, was it the third? Let me see. He comes in 2019. So 2020, 2021, 2022. You go back to 2021, 2022 Premier League season. That's when actual signs of progress were started to show, when he went on to compete, and they ended up finishing 5th. Then the subsequent season, which was his third full season at the club, they did tremendously well. That's when everybody, not everybody, that's when many of us thought this project is getting ahead of itself. That's when they first competed or challenged for the Premier League title. So when that happened, we thought, now that you've fast-tracked your project, can you start getting it over the line? Can you start winning in the fourth campaign? Unfortunately, he competed really well and fell short by 2 points. Then the subsequent season, which was the 5th full season, 2024-2025, he did not compete favorably well, largely because of the combination of misfortunes of having so many injuries in conjunction with a narrow squad. So it worked to his disadvantage. And that's how Liverpool went on and won the league title. Then, so fast forward, we put all that to the side, and now we are into this season. Do you know why? There's a good section of Arsenal fans who say, If he doesn't win anything major this season, then unfortunately, it's time to kiss him goodbye. We will appreciate him, they say, and I quote, we will appreciate him for bringing us thus far, but if he is not the guy that is going to cut it for us in terms of getting us over the line between just competing and eventually winning, we need to part ways with him as soon as possible. So that's dependent on how the season ends. I may have contrary views, his bosses may have contrary views, but a good section of Arsenal fans will have those sentiments. So, retreating back to Chelsea, if you're appointing Xabi Alonso, the point I was trying to drive home is the essence of time. You must accommodate him some time. That's why I was hard done by, or felt hard done by, as a football fanatic when Enzo Maresca and Chelsea decided to call it quits. Not that I believed him from the start. I always thought he was going to struggle. That was my predisposition. He did not have sufficient experience. He had come from Leicester City, and I thought Chelsea would be too hot to handle or too big to handle for Enzo Maresca. But he proved me otherwise. Having won those 2 trophies in his debut campaign, I thought he had brought him sufficient capital in the form of time that no matter how badly he stumbled, he could be given the benefit of doubt that he would rediscover his moji. Unfortunately, it never even got to that. So I constantly go back to, again, Mikel Arteta, because oftentimes in my analogies and explanations, I find him a very good, a prime example to use. When he goes through his the full campaign and they finish 8th, similar to where they had finished the previous season, the only thing that keeps him in that job, or I felt, was 2 reasons. The fact that he had won the FA Cup in his first half season. 2, the absence of fans largely in the stadium, because that's the COVID season, you know. So, excuse me, when you look at those 2 factors, I thought they bought him time. Time that ordinarily he may have not got if maybe the conditions were a bit different. Just imagine, fans are coming to the games and they're boycotting you every match day at home. Some fans desist from coming to the stadium because their team is doing bad. You wouldn't want that. So it served him a lot. It served him really, really a lot. So Chelsea are looking to make a managerial appointment before the start of the World Cup. Remember, we are less than a month away from the kickoff of the FIFA World Cup 2026. That's going to be hosted in the USA, Mexico, and Canada. Now, allow me move away from Chelsea, because Chelsea's conversations may never end. We have some weekend action, but before we get to the weekend action, we had a beautiful game of football last night as Liverpool were hammered by Aston Villa, who beat them by 4 goals to 2. Now, football is very unfortunate. When the game was 1-1, Riongo Moha hit the base of the upright, and not long after that, it was Aston Villa who went to the other side and scored and made it 2-1. It was a poor performance from Liverpool. Poor in the sense of it was typical of what we've seen of them. That lack of desire, that lack of cutting edge, they did not have it. Despite dominating possession to the tune of 55% compared to 45% of Aston Villa, having as many as 16 shots, only 5 were on target compared to Aston Villa's 14 with 9 on target. When you look at some of the key statistics, they'll tell you the picture. Then the team selection, I thought, once you have just Joe Gomez at right back, then why are you playing Curtis Jones in that wing when you have a Mo Salah waiting on the bench? Sometimes I do not understand the rationale for some of these decisions, but I appreciate them in the sense or realm that he is the manager. He gets to watch these players week in week out. He is the he's the technocrat in this particular case, so he knows better. Africa All Night says this is a big game today. It's a must watch. Yeah, there is a big game today that is a must watch between Chelsea and Manchester City in the finals of the FA Cup. So I give them the benefit of doubt that they know more than we do. They know these players more than we do them. They've trained with them or seen them training all throughout the week. And therefore, by the time they make the decision to put them in the starting 11 or omit some in the starting 11, there's good reason for it. Sometimes I feel it's a tactical decision to say, I envision myself that if we do A, B, C, D, if I set up in this sort of manner, we'll be able to get things going this way. But sometimes it just does not work out the way you thought it would. The big game is in Scotland. Oh, yeah, the game between Celtic and Hearts, the title decider, is that the one you're referring to? Anyways, Scottish League. I saw the shenanigans from last week when Celtic earned themselves a late penalty that I think was converted by Cliche Inacho. Anyways, so Liverpool were just poor. Defensively, they were poor. The midfield was far from convincing. I thought they were going through them quite easily. So when you look at the set piece or the corner that culminates into the first goal, Liverpool were caught napping because it's a short corner. Ball is passed around and Morgan Rogers has yards and yards of space within the 18 yards box to carry that ball into the sort of far post, into the back of the net. And you felt that in itself wanting. But they've managed to respond quite quickly through Virgil van Dijk in the 52nd minute. And then Ollie Watkins went on to score a brace. 57th minute, unfortunately, Dominic Szoboszlai slips. They've been making comparisons of when Steven Gerrard slipped when they were playing against Chelsea before losing the 2013-2014 league title. So very unfortunate for Dominic Szoboszlai. He slips and they concede possession and bang, Ollie Watkins scores to make it 2-1. And then in the 73rd minute, again, Liverpool failed to ordinarily or sufficiently clear the ball from a resultant corner. And it's brought back into the area. The goalkeeper makes two brilliant saves before Ollie Watkins, capitalizes on the third rebound and he scores to make it 3-1. And thereafter, he thought, yeah, the game is as good as done and gone for Liverpool. Then John McKean in the 89th minute, he puts a color in. He bangs in one to make it 4-1 at the time. And then Virgil van Dijk found himself on the score sheet again, scoring to make it 4-2, and that's how it finished. Now, with that result, with that victory, that implies that Aston Villa are guaranteed of playing UEFA Champions League football. Therefore, Liverpool must pull up their stockings and win their final day of the season, hoping against hope that Aston Villa drop points, all 3 points in theirs, that if they leapfrog them, but that will be dependent on if Aston Villa are capable of winning or if Aston Villa do win the UEFA Europa League. They've shown signs of capability. If you take yesterday's performance, it's a huge, huge positive. Okay, Jeff T says, and do you think Slot should leave? You say opinion on what Emery has done at Aston Villa, and also do you think Arne Slot should leave? First of all, in my humble view, at some point I was of the view that Arne Slot does leave. In other words, get ahead of the situation before it goes from bad to worse. That's what I felt. As the season is gone on, Some people have said, give him the benefit of doubt, give him next season, let him be the guy to correct his own mistakes. And then it reminded me of that simple phrase from Suits. You don't send a puppy to clean its own mess. But he's had some difficulties or misfortunes with injuries, like some of his star players. Alexander Isak, ever since he was signed, he's not looked like the guy they signed. Mo Salah has lost his moji. Milos Kakes trying to adapt to the Liverpool way, coming in simply from Bournemouth. That left back role with the absence of Conor Bradley has been a key issue. You've had sometimes to play there, Soboslai, etc., etc. So there's a lot of things that have not gone his way in terms of injuries and other things. But I still think he ought to take responsibility for what he's done or not done in that sort of sense. I feel Arne Slot at the moment is still riding on the capital bought last season when he won Liverpool the Premier League title. And it's that kind of achievement that then affords you to stumble and still be given at the time to continue. So I want to believe that despite buying that level of capital last season, he's used his chips on this season in terms of stumbling, and he will be excused. So he will stay. So, in my humble opinion, I think he should stay. And we see what he's made of in his third campaign. I do not think there will be any excuses whatsoever going into next season. But also, I won't be too surprised if before the end of next season he's shown the exit if results are not improving. I mean, as we speak today, Liverpool are among some of the teams unexpectedly that have conceded loads of goals, as many as 52 goals. You know, you're the reigning champion. You've lost 12 games thus far this season. It's not easy. It's not really, really easy. Opinion on what Unai Emery has done. What Unai Emery has done has been remarkable. Really, really remarkable. Especially when you bear in mind the level of club, the nature of resources that they have. They've been trying their very best to stay within the right books of the profit and sustainability rules and that kind of thing. Daniel Berris, Sports Highlights, says happy Saturday. Hello everyone, happy Saturday to you too, and hello to you as well, Daniel. Then Machuamen says, who do you think is gonna win the FA Cup, or will Manchester City win the FA Cup, or losing the FA Cup will change the pressure on the Premier League? Now, if Manchester City were to win the FA Cup, that would mean a domestic double, having already won the Carabao Cup. 2, I think it would give them more drive to push Arsenal until the final day of the season, because it will be the perfect motivation that they need to chase down a domestic treble. I've said this time and again, the only way they do not win a domestic treble is if Arsenal take care of their business. It's that simple, it's that difficult. Because we've talked about Manchester City as not having a good season. And indeed, it's not been a good season by measure of their own standards. But winning a cup double would be no joke. I remember when Liverpool were chasing the quadruple and ended up with 2. It's still a good thing. It's still a good thing. Pep Guardiola has constantly reminded us of how his team is in transition, of how his team is not ready to compete. But if he's of the view that he is not ready to compete, but somehow is still winning pieces of silverware, then you ought to commend that. You ought to really, really commend that. You know, you ought to really commend it. So, in terms of the game itself, I think it's going to be very difficult. I went for a 2-1 victory prediction for Manchester City. But I expect Chelsea to turn up and compete really, to try and compete for pieces of silverware. Unfortunately, both sides are not too lucky as far as the FA Cup is concerned when it comes to the finals. Manchester City are going to be playing their 4th consecutive final, but out of the previous 3, they've only won 1 against Manchester United, lost 2 against Manchester United and Crystal Palace. Then, prior to that, Chelsea had landed at Wembley for 3 consecutive years in as far as the FA Cup was concerned. But they lost out to Arsenal in 2020, lost out to Leicester City in 2021, and to Liverpool in 2022. So really, you must think of it that way. You must think of it that way. So both sides are not too lucky. A part of me wants to believe that Chelsea can upset Manchester City, because when you look at the players that they have, they're really capable of upsetting that Manchester City side. We know that Manchester City can concede. So if you have Robert Sanchez in goal, Malo Gusto, Richie James, Wesley Fofana, Levi Colwill, and then Moises Caicedo alongside Lavia or Andre Santos, Elliot Anderson, you push Cole Palmer to sort of occupy the width, and then you have a Pedro Neto and Joao Pedro. So those are guys that are capable of getting you a result. They just need to be motivated enough to get the result, But also, the game is very important for Chelsea, because it's their window to qualify for European football. If you win the FA Cup, you're going to play at least UEFA Europa League football, and they could use the resources as minimal as they could be in comparison to those of the UEFA Champions League. They could use those resources. So Chelsea have something very big to lose. You see, going to Europe is more than just a prestigious thing. It's more than just vibes. It's also commercial. So once you think about the commercial aspects, then I'm sure those Chelsea players are going to be made some form of promises in terms of what they could stand to win if the team wins the FA Cup. But like I said, Manchester City seem to be in a very good position. They seem to be in they have the momentum on their side in terms of winning. Momentum is on their side, both in the Premier League and away from the Premier League. Chelsea, in sharp contrast, do not have the momentum on their side. When you look at their last 5 meetings, actually they lost 6 Premier League games in a row before drawing away to Liverpool. But usually I say, when a team loses so many games, they cease to care and just play it out. And before you know it, they are back to winning ways. So those are my views and thoughts on the FA Cup. Then, the match day 37 will continue on Super Sunday. Like I said, there's no game on Saturday in as far as the Premier League is concerned, because it's the FA Cup finals, But on Sunday, which will be tomorrow, at 2:30 p.m., they'll be up against Nottingham Forest. Manchester United will be up against Nottingham Forest. At 5 p.m., we'll have about 4 games to be played between Brentford and Crystal Palace, Everton and Sunderland, Leeds against Brighton, Wolverhampton Wanderers against Fulham, and then in the late kickoff between Newcastle and West Ham. Machuameni says, do you think Carrick being permanent is the right choice? Now, about Michael Adrian Carrick, again, the other day, I did an exclusive video about Michael Carrick. It's there on the channel under the video section. But yesterday, I also did an impromptu live to discuss Michael Adrian Carrick's news that he was being given the permanent job. My feelings about that, such that as such that I do not feel that Manchester United have done everything it takes to find better candidates than Michael Carrick. I feel that they've excused themselves the rigorous process of trying to find a new guy. They've excused themselves from the idea of possibly having to pay a potential compensation fee for a desired candidate of a manager. They had interest in what's his name? In Thomas Tuchel. Once Thomas Tuchel extended his stay with the England national team, it's like somebody had put a dagger in their backs. They felt hard done by because he was their most prized asset that they were looking to consider. Now, in their consideration, they've looked at Andoni Iraola and Unai Emery. I do not know to what extent of the conversations those were had, but that is what has been reported. If I were to put those two guys, each on a weighing scale against Michael Carrick, I think they would come out on top. But maybe it's more than just that, you know. I would have want to hear that Manchester United vetted or interviewed 7 potentials for the head coach role, but only one came out on top. And that's Michael Carrick, and that's why we've chosen to go with him. However, you can't also help it think that maybe he's done a good job. Because as an interim, he steadied the ship. He's qualified for Champions League football with 3 games to spare. He did that. Tremendous achievement. And that would have been the ask. So therefore, he does deserve to be, awarded a permanent role. But for me, the question is, at whose expense are you giving him the permanent role? Because I thought you could have done better in your search. Which team you support in the World Cup and who is your favorite player from Africa? Let me respond to that in a bit. So Man United, Michael Carrick has the job. Jason Wilcox, director of football, and Omar Barida, the CEO, decided to recommend him to their boss in Sir Jim Ratcliffe. And I think they've decided to, it's not even a safe bet. They've decided to risk their reputations on it and hope that it will work out. I cannot stand on my 2 legs and say it's not going to work out or it won't work out. I'm not tall enough to see what's coming tomorrow or what will happen tomorrow. But I'd want to associate myself with the school of thought that I feel they could have done better. I would have loved to understand that there was a rigorous process, that people were interviewed, that people were assessed, that people gave their views of Manchester United, even though looking in from the outside. And then, based on all that, they would come down to a conclusion to say, you know what? Out of the 6, 7, 10 candidates we've interviewed for this job, Adrian Carrick remains the leading candidate for the role, and therefore, henceforth, we're giving it to him. He's done well as an interim. They got convinced and recommended his name to Sir Jim Ratcliffe, and he said, we can proceed. I'm okay with Carrick if you think he's okay. So that's the situation. What team will I be supporting at the World Cup? It's going to be Brazil. Always is Brazil for as long as the Uganda Cranes are not there. Like, when have they ever even been to the World Cup? Of course, never. Who is your favorite African player? Sorry, favorite player from Africa? Bit of a difficult question, as it's not something that I consciously think about. But looking around, I'd say Akraf Hakimi. You see, when you say favorites, I don't know. I don't know if I have a favorite player, but I'll talk about the excellent talents that I think are from Africa. Akraf Hakimi at right back is a really, really decent guy. A really, really decent guy. Unfortunately for Muhammad Kudus, his season has been laden with injuries, so I have not gotten a chance to see enough of him consistently for Tottenham Hotspur, even though I appreciate him a great deal. Of course, Mo Salah, much respect to the guy, much respect. So I do not think I have that individual favorite player per se, but there's just talents from Africa that I really, really appreciate so far, you know. Anyways, so Man United, Nottingham Forest, those two guys do not have much to play for. Nottingham Forest were steered to safety and are not going to be relegated. Manchester United have confirmed their place already in the UEFA Champions League. Following Aston Villa's victory, they moved to fourth on the Premier League table, and now Liverpool are behind them. Liverpool need to win on the first day and hope that Aston Villa loses on the last day for them to guarantee a place for Liverpool to finish fourth, and that if Aston Villa were to win the UEFA Europa League title, sixth place would also go to the Champions League, in that sort of analogy. New York says, do you offer rich rounds? Are you at top bottom? What do you mean, do I offer rich rounds? What's that supposed to mean? And then, are you top or bottom? Top or bottom of what? Please give me a bit more clarity in your questions. So, first leg ended 2-2. Nottingham Forest had developed a knack of beating up against this Manchester United. They've beaten them up against 3 times in the last 5. There's been 1 victory for Man United and 2 draws. So, my expectation now, the reason as why I'm finding it hard to predict some of these games is I do not know the kind of lineups managers are going to bring. Why it's the tail end of the season, they're giving players that ordinarily weren't playing more minutes. Some of them have already acknowledged or accepted that they are going to finish where they currently are in terms of the league table, and that sort of thing in a way. So for Man United against Nottingham Forest, it's a home game. Going to be very, very difficult. I do not think he will overly rotate his squad like he did against Sunderland. But I'd give Manchester United the edge on this one. But if it does end in a 1 or 2 draw, I will not be surprised one bit. Then Newcastle are up against West Ham, another pivotal game in this weekend. Why? Because of what it would imply on the Premier League table. If West Ham were to get beat, they would be edging closer and closer to the drop zone. If West Ham were to go to St. James's Park and win the game of football, it would put a lot of pressure to Tottenham Hotspur to also find a way and win their game. Subsequent week, that's against what? Against Chelsea, yes, which is a very, very difficult game for Tottenham Hotspur. So I do not think they would want to risk it that way. Like I've continuously said, there are no favors in this game. Taba says, hello, remember me? Yeah, obviously I remember you. I remember you saying 10 a.m. would not be plausible for you. Anyway, because you've come at the tail end of the broadcast. But it's a pleasure to have you nonetheless. Jesus Christ, it's getting hot in here. Somebody buy me a fan. Anyways, so for West Ham, it's a make or break game. For Newcastle, it's just another opportunity to put a smile on those home fan faces. But in terms of significance, what the 3 points would mean, they would mean the world to West Ham. They would mean the world to West Ham because of their fight against relegation. I've gone on a leap of faith and predicted that West Ham will win by 2-1. They've won 2 games, actually 3, no, 2 of the last 5, lost 2 and drew 1. So, but West Ham also have a history of winning at St. James's Park by 2-0. That was last season. So the question is, can they complete a double on Newcastle? They've already beaten him by 3-1 in the earlier stage of the campaign. So more of that. And like I said, I went on a leap of faith and said that West Ham will win that one. It's not to say that Newcastle are poor, but they've been far from convincing throughout the campaign. Then in the Spanish La Liga, you'll have a majority of games kicking off at 2 p.m. And then you'll have one game that I think will kick off later. That's between Barcelona and Real Betis, you know. So, but here's the run of fixtures from the Spanish La Liga. At 8 p.m., of course, Athletic Bilbao against Celta Vigo, Atletico de Madrid take on Girona, Elche against Getafe, Levante against Mallorca, Osasuna against Espanyol, Rayo Vallecano against Villarreal, Rio Oviedo against Deportivo Alaves, Real Sociedad versus Valencia, Sevilla at home against Real Madrid, and Barcelona against Real Betis in the late kickoff at 10:45 p.m. Then in the Italian Serie A, you also have a plethora of games to play. AC Roma take on Lazio at 1 p.m. Como take on Parma at the same kickoff time. So do AC Milan and Genoa. Then as well as Juventus against Fiorentina. All games kicking off at 1 p.m. And then Pisa. By the way, all these games are on Sunday. So Pisa will take on Napoli, and then at 4 p.m. Inter take on Hellas Verona. At 7 p.m. Atalanta take on Bologna. At 9:15 p.m. Cagliari against Torino, Sassuolo against Lecce, Udinese against Cremonese. Same applies for the French League One on Super Sunday. Brest against Angers, Lille against Auxerre. Best winger according to you. Best winger, Michael Olise at the moment. He is the best winger at the moment. Lille against Auxerre, Lorient against Le Havre, Lyon against Lens, Marseille against Stade Rennes, Nantes against Toulouse, Nice against Metz, Paris FC against Paris Saint-Germain, and Strasbourg against AC Monaco. So those are the major leagues. Now, like I said, majority of those games are on Super Sunday. So, guys, why don't you allow me call it a wrap? It's been a pleasure doing this with you. Thank you so much, Taba. Thank you so much, Africa Will Never Unite. New York. Thank you so much. Machua Men, always a pleasure. Daniel Berry Sports. Thank you so much. GFT, always a pleasure. Maslow, thank you so much. Rio Dandy, was a pleasure having you as part of the broadcast. Have yourselves a blessed weekend. Go enjoy those weekend games, and bye-bye for now. Stay blessed. Thank you so much.